Paramahamsa Paripajikacharya Stotra Sata Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Dwarka Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Tulasi Maharani Ki Jai, Ekadashi Vrata Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. So today will be a reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from the 5th canto, chapter 18, text 12. So the canto is called the Creative Impetus, and chapter 18 is called the Prayers Offered to the Lord by the Residents of Jambudvip. Does everyone have it on their mobile devices? Yes, 5:18:12. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Manoratena sati tavato bahi.
Manoratena sati tavato bahi.
Manoratena sati davato bahi.
Manoratena sati tavato bahi.
Yasyati bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Manoratena sati davato bahi.
Manoratena sati tavato bahi.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna. Manoratena sati davato bahi.
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana.
Sarve gunastatra samasate sura.
Hara bhaktasya kuto mahatguna.
Manoratena sati davato bahi.
Yasyasti
Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati akinchana. Sarve gunastatra samasate sura. Hara तस्य कुतो महागुणः
मनोरथेन सति धावतो वही यस्यास्ति भक्तिः भगवत्या किञ्चना सर्वे गुणस्तत्र समासते सुराः
अरावभक्तस्य कुतो महागुणः मनोरथेन
सति धावतो वही यस्यास्ति भक्तिः भगवत्या किञ्चना सर्वे गुणस्तत्र समासते सुराः तदा भक्तस्य कुतो महागुणः मनोरथेन सति धावतो वही यस्यास्ति भक्तिः भगवत्या किञ्चना सर्वे गुणस्तत्र समासते सुराः
अभक्तस्य कुतो महागुणः
अराभक्तस्य कुतो महागुणः
मनोरथेन सति भवतो वही
मनोरथेन सति धावतो वही
Maybe any of the Matajis would like to recite? Probably not. Looks very busy. So, this is the synonyms. Yasya, of whom? Asti, there is. Bhakti, devotional service. Bhagavati, to the Supreme Personality of God. Akinchana, without any motive. Sarve, with all. Gune, good qualities. Tatra, there, in that person. Samasate, reside. Sura, all the demigods. Aro, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Abhaktasya, of a person who is not devoted. Kuta, where? Mahadguna, good qualities. Manoratena, by mental speculation. Asati, in the temporary material world. Davataha, who is running. Bahi, outside. So to give the context, I mentioned the title of the chapter is the prayers offered to the Lord by the residents of Jamadip. So Shukadev Goswami is describing here different personalities, different residents of Jambudvip actually glorifying the different forms of the Lord. And this verse is actually Prahlad Maharaj describing or glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Narsinghadev. So there's a few verses preceding this, but this verse is actually describing the power of unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So translation and the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Shri Prabhupada. All the demigods and their exalted qualities such as religion, knowledge, renunciation become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities. Even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives, he must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? Purport. As explained in the next verse, Krishna is the original source of all living entities. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna says, Mamaivam so jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatana manashashtanendriyani prakriti-stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. All living entities are part and parcel of Krishna, and therefore when they revive their original Krishna consciousness, they possess all the good qualities of Krishna in a small quantity. When one engages himself in the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakyam Atmanivedanam, one's heart becomes purified, and he immediately understands his relationship with Krishna. He then revives his original quality of Krishna consciousness. In the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 8, there is a description of some of the qualities of devotees. For example, Sri Pandit Haridas is described as being very well behaved, tolerant, peaceful, magnanimous, and grave. In addition, he spoke very sweetly. His endeavors were very pleasing. He was always patient. He respected everyone. He always worked for everyone's benefit. His mind was free of duplicity, and he was completely devoid of all malicious activities. These are all originally qualities of Krishna. And when one becomes a devotee, they automatically become manifest. Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says that all good qualities become manifest in the body of a Vaishnava, and that only by the presence of these good qualities can one distinguish a Vaishnava from a non-Vaishnava. Krishnadas Kaviraj lists the following 26 good qualities of a Vaishnava. 1. He is very kind to everyone. 2. He does not make anyone his enemy. 3. He is truthful. 4. He is equal to everyone. 5. No one can find any fault in him. 6. He is magnanimous. 7. He is mild. 8. He is always clean. 9. He is without possessions. 10. He works for everyone's benefit. 11. He is very peaceful. 12. He is always surrendered to Krishna. 13. He has no material desires. 14. He is very meek. 15. He is steady. 16. He controls his senses. 17. He does not eat more than required. 18. He is not influenced by the Lord's illusory energy. 19. He offers respect to everyone. 20. He does not desire any respect for himself. 21. He is very grave. 22. He is merciful. 23. He is friendly. 24. He is poetic. 25. He is expert. And 26. He is silent. So I'll actually recite the source of this, those 26 qualities, which is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 78 to 80. So this is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, of course, giving the Sanskrit for those qualities. Kripala akrita droha satya sarasama nidosha vadanyam vidu suchiya akinchana sarvopa karakashanta krishneka sharana akama aniya stira vijeta sadguna mitabuk apramata manadna amani gambira karuna maitra kavi daksha mauni. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum-mritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabharakam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Gopinath Prabhu Shri Guru Vaishnavascha Shri Rupam Sarvajatam Sagana Rangnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Saruna Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dikhavandu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrinda Vaneshwari Vishwanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Manchakapatruscha Vipasya Vihitamam Pavanyo Vaishnavyo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So as usual, devotees have the culture of asking for the blessings of the Vaishnavas, but today I'll request more than blessings. So firstly, I would like to request your blessings to be able to speak something relevant and something beneficial for myself. Of course, the speaker is ultimately also the one that benefits by trying to share whatever he's able to from the divine scriptures. But also I would like to actually request the help of the devotees and senior devotees in trying to glorify the Vaishnava, and specifically the Vaishnava personality. I would like to enlighten those qualities that were mentioned in His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. And I thought that today is a very nice day to actually glorify the Vaishnavas. Always a nice day, but specifically on Ekadashi, we know we are supposed to put extra focus on our devotional practices, and specifically in the chanting and hearing of the holy name and the glorification of the Lord. But the Lord is actually even more pleased when we glorify His devotees. So I thought it would be appropriate to try and glorify Srila Prabhupada. So I'll try and make it interactive a little today, so please don't hesitate to help me by trying to share something about Srila Prabhupada. So there's many qualities that were described. It would be very difficult for us to go into all of them, but I specifically chose 3, so maybe the devotees will be able to share on those 3. But if we have time, we can open up also on a few more. So Prabhupada actually mentions in a purport in Canto 3, chapter 16. This is Vishnu actually speaking to the 4 Kumaras, and it's after the incident that happened with Jain Vijay, and ended up in the Kumaras cursing Jain Vijay because they were not allowed entrance into Vaikuntha. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead actually mentions, so this is the translation to the verse, a wrong act committed by servants leads people in general to blame his master. Just as a spot of white leprosy on any part of the body pollutes all of the skin. And in the purport, Prabhupada mentions there are 26 qualifications mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. A devotee should always see that his Vaishnava qualities increase with the advancement of his Krishna consciousness. A devotee should be blameless because any offense by the devotee is a scar on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The devotee's duty is to be always conscious in his dealings with others, especially with another devotee of the Lord. So it's very nice how Prabhupada clarifies the point that yes, by practicing Krishna consciousness, and later we go into what specific aspect actually allows us to develop those qualities, but Prabhupada mentions that we should actually see that those qualities are being developed. This is actually a barometer of our advancement in Krishna consciousness. And the glorification of our spiritual master or of the Supreme Lord is also dependent on our behavior and the qualities we display. So Prabhupada makes the point that actually when we misbehave, directly we are actually making offense to the Lord, not just maybe by our behavior, committing an aparad, but also because we are actually defaming the Lord. So for example, if we take Srila Prabhupada as the person we are under his guidance, we're following within Iskcon. So our behavior actually reflects on Srila Prabhupada and how people actually accept Srila Prabhupada. So it's very, very important to understand everything we'll do will have an effect on how people perceive Srila Prabhupada, his mission. Although he is untouched by it, as the Lord is untouched by anything material. But here Lord Vishnu makes the comment that just as a spot of white leprosy on any part of the body pollutes all of the skin. So this is actually the influence it has on the vision or conditioned vision of the living entity. So it's very important that as long as people don't have the proper vision of the Supreme Lord or the Spiritual Master, we will play a big role in them actually being able to see the Lord accordingly and see Srila Prabhupada or our Spiritual Master accordingly. So actually those qualities are also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, maybe they're not exactly the same ones, but it's mentioned in chapter 12, Bhagavad Gita verses 13 to 20, many of the similar qualities. And Krishna actually finishes that verse every time. Such a devotee is very dear to me. So Krishna actually explains to Arjuna the characteristics or the qualities of the devotee that make him very dear. So the qualities I chose to speak to today, the first one I wanted to mention is Daksha, or expert. So to try and meditate on the expertise of Srila Prabhupada. So one famous expertise we are all very aware of, and every day we're relishing the fruits of that, is the amazing expertise Srila Prabhupada had in cooking for the Lord. And we can see how Srila Prabhupada imbued that in also the mission of Iskcon, put such an importance on prasadam distribution. And not just, of course, the most important aspect is, we all know the devotion that we put into the cooking, but devotion is very practical. So Prabhupada emphasized a lot about the quality of the cooking, and specifically the type of cooking, in the sense that we should always try and cook in the mode of goodness, as Krishna describes those qualities in the Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada imbibed that same mood in most of his followers, and one of his famous cooks or disciples, first disciples, was Grace Yamuna Devi. And we know how Prabhupada actually inspired her for many of the recipes, that she ended up even writing a whole book that was given awards. So we can see how Prabhupada's expertise in cooking actually manifested within the mission, within the quality of our offerings to the Lord, the quality in our food distribution. We're trying our best, of course, in the quality in our food for life, attracting people to Krishna consciousness by cooking. And even the very refined levels of cooking, whether it's writing cookbooks, and even having awards by Grace Yamuna Devi, and I think Gopinath Prabhu also received many awards for his cooking. Srila Prabhupada was also an expert artist, and we can see this everywhere around our Iskcon temples. It's incredible the art that Srila Prabhupada has been able to transmit through his disciples. From what I've heard, and many stories told by devotees, actually Prabhupada is very personally involved in the design of art. Prabhupada gave very clear details about Shri Rukmini Dwarkadish ki, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gaurnitai ki. So yeah, Prabhupada was very involved actually in the specific details of the paintings of the different artistic expressions of the devotees. He obviously wanted to imbue them with devotion, and as Prabhupada said, the paintings are actually windows to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada is very particular about the quality of the art, and the devotion was put into them. Prabhupada is also a perfect doctor. Now, he wasn't just prescribing before he joined he started the Krishna Consciousness movement, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He was, of course, working as a pharmacist, but Prabhupada was a perfect doctor, not just in physical means, as he helped many devotees to cure their diseases. He was also perfect in prescribing devotees how to deal with their mental issues, as devotees or people in general often succumb to serious mental strain, difficulties and challenges. And we can see through the different conversations, letters Prabhupada wrote. He was perfect in analyzing the person's or the devotee's mental challenges, and would always give the right instructions. And then, of course, on a spiritual level, to try and infuse devotees with a better understanding of how to grow in their Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada was a great manager, as we can see very clearly by the movement he created. Amazingly how he was able in 11 years, through mostly letters and of course also direct contact whenever he was in specific areas of temples, to actually tell devotees very simply, most of the time you see very simply what to do, and often he would give details, but he would know which devotees to give the responsibilities and how to actually give them the empowerment to be able to actually do what they were meant to do as temple presidents, as secretaries, as temple commanders, as Sankirtan devotees, as cooks, pujaris, and everything else. So we could see how Prabhupada was expert at managing. He was also an amazing writer. Of course, we understand he's not just a writer, he's someone who actually not just understands, but who has completely realized the meaning and the deeper essence, the deepest essence of Vedic scripture, of Krishna consciousness. But yeah, he was expert in writing. As we can see, many scholars would also glorify Srila Prabhupada's books as unique, and that he was actually able to really make the Vedic knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam, and the essence of all the spiritual knowledge very relevant and very understanding to the modern world. Prabhupada was also expert at dealing with challenging questions, and I'm sure devotees have heard on the interviews or on even television broadcasts, their programs, how Prabhupada would expertly deal with challenges. He knew what to say at what time. One famous interaction with a journalist who was, of course, trying to challenge Prabhupada he was asking Prabhupada, why have you come to the West, why have you come to America? Because you're speaking about actually helping the world, and it seems that in India the challenges are far greater. It seems that the death rate is far greater in India. And Prabhupada paused a little and he looked at the reporter and he said, from what I've seen, the death rate is 100% everywhere. So Prabhupada knew how to humorously deal with a different situation. And I think this is in the same interview, there was also a lady that was asking a typical question, but that doesn't add much value to the discussion. That's why Prabhupada answered it in that way. She asked Prabhupada, why do the devotees, or why do you shave your head? And Prabhupada looked at her and he said, why do you shave your legs? So this was a very intense question, and she got a bit shocked. But then Prabhupada made it a point with a lot of humor. We try to keep a cool head and warm legs. So of course Prabhupada knew exactly how to answer every question according to the person's understanding or what they were trying to get from Srila Prabhupada. And he was also perfect at dealing with the relationships of devotees, as we also heard or have read probably in many letters how devotees He used to struggle, as we all do in this world, in our relationships, and Prabhupada would always give the perfect way of actually trying to get out of this circumstance and this difficulty. He would generally give a very, yes, you would say a very high level understanding. Ultimately, we have to develop tolerance, we have to accept that this is for our benefit, there's karma involved, etc. This is an opportunity to learn, to grow, but he would often give a very practical way of actually dealing with that. So in many instances, devotees maybe couldn't manage to get over a certain situation, but Prabhupada would understand that, and he would actually give maybe the next step devotees could take. So he was perfect in analyzing and dealing with relationships. You could call that being a perfect psychiatrist, and of course Prabhupada was, in that sense, a perfect spiritual psychiatrist. So maybe I would like to open up to devotees, if there's any other quality you could see in Prabhupada's expertise, maybe a story you could share, which showing how Prabhupada displayed expertise in a specific way, in a specific quality. Yes, David Prabhu?
As you mentioned, in terms of his management, also like his strategies that he put in place, like each temple is independent, individual rather than collective in his finance. So he was very strategic. And also in terms of he was expert in fighting actually, like you can see with Mr. M. He was really how to create meetings and not to protect what he had and not to be taken advantage of.
Thank you. Yes, I put the word there actually, marketing, or he was a perfect treasurer. So thank you, yes, for sharing that. Anyone else? Antaranga?
I would say he was definitely an expert in maintaining the status quo philosophy, but adjusting it to the time, place, and circumstances. Like for instance, the revolutionary adjustment of giving ladies Brahman initiation, which is unheard of, or varieties of other aspects where he understood the necessary essence of the philosophy, but he also understands that he's presenting this Vedic culture in the Western world, which is completely different from the tradition of Vedic concepts. So he understood and expertly presented. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
He was expert in making new devotees from hippies to happies. He knew what was the switch for them. He knew what exact things that would attract them, and it was just incredible. For one person, it would be different to another person. So yeah, it's like attracting down to pieces. Whereas if you look at Vrindavan, it would be more of a social and environment things that people. So it's just amazing and great.
Yeah, it's amazing you mentioning this, because I'm sure we all had the experience that although I have this experience anywhere I go, Iskcon Temple, it feels like home. You find the same things going, the same program happening, the same philosophy, of course, the same practices, the same devotees in one sense. Of course, different devotees, but the same devotees doing the same things. But at the same time, like mentioned yesterday, I think Prabhu was also mentioning, and the temple president also mentioned how this was actually a combination of all the holy dhams. We find actually in different temples still a different flavor. So Prabhupada allowed for that, and we can see even in the cultural aspects of a different area of the world, Prabhupada actually allowed that to be used in Krishna's service. So it's amazing how, yes, although every Iskcon temple is a spiritual world, in one sense they're not different. In many ways there's different varieties you will find specifically one that you might not exactly find or highlighted in another. So it's wonderful that we are actually able to experience this, and even on this trip we experience also the difference with Nairobi and Mombasa. So Prabhupada very much encouraged that also. So I would like to actually summarize Sri Prabhupada's expertise So when Srila Prabhupada arrived on the shores of America in 1965, he was faced with the tremendous challenge of interesting a civilization of determined sense enjoyers in Krishna consciousness lifestyle, which is based on the principles of austerity, sacrifice, spiritual discipline, and gradual detachment from sense gratification. For many years, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had sent his disciples to preach in the Western countries, and they were unable to circumvent this problem, let alone ignite a spiritual explosion as Srila Prabhupada did. Those waves are still being felt throughout the world. Srila Prabhupada demonstrated his expertise by tailoring his presentation of Krishna consciousness perfectly according to time and circumstance. He offered a spiritual program which the common man could easily follow, and presented it in such an attractive and palatable fashion that all sincere souls were spontaneously attracted. Srila Prabhupada's expertise was so astounding that even in his physical absence, Krishna consciousness is being effectively spread throughout the faithful application of his instructions. So another quality I wanted to glorify Srila Prabhupada is suchi, or cleanliness. So we know that Krishna's conscious movement is actually meant for purifying the world, and Prabhupada mentioned this, he said revolutionary cleanliness. Now he wasn't just speaking about the externals, but the internal, of course, the consciousness, which mainly is by the chanting of the holy name and hearing and speaking on glorifying the Supreme Lord. So in some ways we can actually, Iskcon is often described in many ways. One famous one we know is described as a kitchen religion, we were speaking about Prashad. But we could also say that the Krishna conscious movement is a cleaning movement. Actually, everything we're doing is cleaning. If you look at it, the chanting the holy name is cleaning our hearts, purifying our conscience. Same as hearing Shastra. Deity worship is actually one of the main aspects. We know the two main aspects is being on time and cleanliness, actually, how to become clean. We do all these mantras, we clean our bodies, we put on clean clothes, we try and keep the temple and the environment as clean as possible. And all of our different activities, whether, like we mentioned, the cooking, whether we mentioned our dealings, it should be done with as much purity as possible. So again, coming back to Yamuna Devi, as she was so wonderfully instructed by Prabhupada in so many ways. I'm sure many devotees have heard the pastime. The first time she actually was directly engaged by Srila Prabhupada, which was immediately when she came to the temple. Actually, her sister Janaki, Mata Janaki Devi, was getting married, and Prabhupada directly told her, "You're going to help me cook a feast for the wedding." So he brought her into the kitchen, told her what to do, what to cut. And Yamuna Devi is actually sharing the memories that at the time she was still smoking. So Prabhupada, you can see his ability. He didn't directly tell her, okay, you got to stop smoking or you cannot cook, you know, you got to follow the four ranks. He didn't say that. So basically she was going out during the cooking to smoke. And Prabhupada tolerated that. We imagine how much we would probably struggle to have someone cook with us and do that. Of course, nowadays, Prabhupada did establish, now we've come to a certain understanding and standard. We have devotees who have understood, who are following that. But Prabhupada, basically every time she would come in, he would tell her, please wash your hands. Same thing when she would touch her face, please wash your hands. So Prabhupada was kindly, every time she was doing something, you could say inappropriate, not correct in her service, in cooking for the Lord, Prabhupada was directly, nicely and correctly adjusting things so she was actually learning. And she very quickly understood that actually she should stop smoking, and she understood also the ways of actually behaving in the kitchen. So Prabhupada also mentioned, I don't know if this was to Yamuna Devi, but I heard it mentioned by a few devotees also, that cooking is cleaning. So when we cook for the Lord, cleaning should be there. Otherwise, Prabhupada said, the Lord doesn't need to accept your offering. The Lord doesn't need all this variety and opulent thing. Actually, it's the purity of our consciousness So cleaning in relation to that, but it externally also manifests in the way we use the most fresh, clean, most tasty ingredients, and make sure we prepare them nicely by cleaning them and keeping ourselves clean during the cleaning, during the cooking, and making sure also that while we cook, we don't make a mess, because we have a tendency to do that, to do something, make a mess, and we'll clean later, but actually this is very Rajasic. So in the Rajasic mode, people do clean, we can see that, especially in the West, but they have the tendency also to make things very pure and dirty, so actually goodness means maintaining. So Prabhupada is making that point to Yamuna Devi, while you're cooking, always make sure that things are clean. And Yamuna actually shares that Prabhupada also instructed her that the pots should be as clean outside as inside. So also something that we often struggle with, we think as long as inside is clean, it's fine. Prabhupada didn't want us to slack in any way. Another one is Prabhupada very nicely reminded devotees how it's important that we keep a place clean always. So of course, the place we always used to cleaning daily is a temple, and Prabhupada in one incident saw a devotee cleaning with a bucket and a piece of cloth. And Prabhupada asked, "What are you doing?" The devotee was a bit surprised. Prabhupada, "I'm cleaning." And he's like, "How are you doing it? What is this?" And the devotee didn't know what to answer. And Prabhupada said, "Wait, I'll show you." So Prabhupada went, he told the devotee, "Get another bucket, fill it up with water." And so Prabhupada actually showed that the proper way of cleaning is there's different levels of cleanliness, and he put himself on his knees actually on the floor, and he said, "One bucket of water is for taking the dirt out of the cloth." I'm sure in Gurukul you've been trained up that way. And one bucket of water is actually the clean water meant to clean the floor. So Prabhupada very clearly showed that there's, a very correct way of cleaning, and he was ready himself to show the devotee. So yes, very, very nice to see how Prabhupada was in all instances ready to teach by his own example. Satyana Maharaj also shares once that he was actually helping, he was doing the transfer in Soho Temple in England in the early days, and he was actually washing the plates. And he was very, at that point he said his mind was a bit disturbed because he wasn't sure if he wanted to stay there in the temple or move out, to go back to Germany. And during that transfer he wasn't attentive. And then a senior devotee, I can't remember the name of the devotee, but actually came up to him and said, "Prabhupada is asking why the plates weren't clean." And Satyana Maharaj was surprised, and he said, "How come I thought I cleaned?" He said, "No, Prabhupada, Krishna actually told Sri Prabhupada, and he understood Krishna told Prabhupada that the plate actually had some dried leftovers on the plate." And he actually understood, or sorry, I'm mistaken. He didn't say, Krishna said that he didn't understand how Prabhupada could know, because he understood that the only person that could have seen it was the pujari. But the pujari, as he could see, was so quickly and busy that to prepare offerings, he would have missed it. So he thought, how could Prabhupada know once the prasadam is on, you would have seen the leftovers from the previous offering? So he actually understood, this is Satyana Maharaj saying that actually Prabhupada knew because Krishna directly told him that, why are my plates not being cleaned properly? So he said from that day on, he never was inattentive in his cleaning duties, in the transfer duties of the lordships. So I would like to summarize also this aspect of cleanliness of Srila Prabhupada, how this is primordial in our devotional practices. Srila Prabhupada exhibited summit cleanliness both internally and externally. His heart and mind were constantly submerged in the purifying waters of love of God, and his shining body was always engaged in the Lord's pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada's cleanliness was so profound and far-reaching that not only was he himself impeccable, but he also purified the lives of thousands of men and women who had previously possessed no proper concept of spiritual or bodily cleanliness. So we can see how all these wonderful Vaishnavas are shining bright and clean. That's all by the the grace of Srila Prabhupada. So the last quality I would like to highlight is Vadanya, magnanimous, or the other one that's there that's very similar is Sarva Upakarata, or working for the welfare of everyone. So maybe I have a few points I mentioned, but I think it would be nice that maybe devotees mention how Srila Prabhupada manifests that. If you could give maybe some example or a story specifically showing how Srila Prabhupada was the most magnanimous person and was actually working for the welfare of every living entity. Yes?
There's just one small story. It was mentioned by Brahmananda Prabhu. So there was some kind of a conversation, and Brahmananda Prabhu, someone said that God, Krishna is very, very merciful. And Brahmananda Prabhu said, no, I think Prabhupada is even more merciful than God, because he came to 23rd Avenue.
Lower East Side. Before that,
yes,
the Lower East Side.
He came down for me to pick me up. Where Krishna doesn't go, he said, I think Prabhupada is even more merciful than Krishna. So that's my
Yeah, very nice actually. I'm sure devotees have heard that. There was a prelude to that. Is basically he had made that mistake once to say that Prabhupada is as great as God and Prabhupada. There was a few devotees that made the mistake, and Prabhupada, of course, heavily chastised them, even and expelled them from Iskcon. These are some of our greatest leaders who, of course, came back. Prabhupada was just trying to set an example. And then I think Kadam Kana Maharshi shares his example. He said, Brahmananda Prabhu then said, I made that mistake once, but actually now I've understood Prabhupada is even greater than God for exactly the reason, because he came to the lower side. So it's amazing how, yes, in that context, he was able to actually glorify Prabhupada in the proper way. Anyone else would like to share?
Prabhupada was not only the human being, even he was very compassionate and to the other living entity. Once I was listening, there was one insect was dying. Sri Prabhupada, he told me, his disciple, chant for 1 round for this, because he is dying now. They are very compassionate for the other living entity.
This reminds me, actually, it was, I think of the Srila Prabhu massaging Prabhupada, and there were some ants. And Prabhupada basically told him to be careful because he was about to crush the ants, and Prabhupada actually was chanting. He saw them while he was massaging him, he was actually chanting to the ant. So he was actually directly, you could see Prabhupada in many instances was showing how he really cared for every living entity. So maybe anything else devotee would like? Yes, but Prabhu.
Sarva Upakar means welfare of all others, and Mahavadanyaya is extremely merciful. So Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, and he was respected there, and he was very comfortable there, doing his worship and chanting, writing. But then he gave up that to go to a very unknown situation. At an advanced age to give the world Krishna consciousness. And he traveled up to the age of 70 more than 14 times I think, around the world. Like we're traveling, 10 hours or 12 hours, and like when you're young, traveling is something. When your body is old, then it's big stuff. He went through so many difficulties to give that Krishna consciousness to others. And then he would sleep very little. He would, sleep very short a little time, and then he'd spend the whole night and the morning translating the literature books for all of us and all of humanity. So he's always thinking about the welfare of others.
Thank you. Thank you. And like you mentioned about the traveling, speaking with at least 2 or 3 devotees about this, how even although we're in a retreat, just the traveling is very tiring, and this is like very short traveling, and you can imagine Prabhupada was doing that constantly, every week, every month, mostly apart from some periods year after year. So So it's incredible. Just by our little experience of traveling now, we can see that what Prabhupada had to go through, and yes, for the benefit of the world. And I was actually thinking of one story. So Tama Krishna Maharaj is sharing how this devotee called Chaitanya Guru was actually a disciple of Prabhupada. This was in India. He had developed, I think it was in Mumbai, developed a tendency to actually, while he was doing the whole membership program that Prabhupada had started at the time, developed a tendency to actually collect money for himself. And the devotees find out, and they told Prabhupada, and Tamakrishna Maharaj is sharing this, and he told Prabhupada, and he said, this person is kind of going for his own reasons, he's not directly collecting for the temple only. So I think we should warn all the members, he's approaching. And basically, I don't know if he should stay around. And Prabhupada basically said, okay, you shouldn't do this, but no, he should stay. And then later on, Tamakrishna Maharaj shares that he even actually, this Chaitanya group, decided to start associating with some yogi on the beach who had some mystic city apparently that he could put one coin from one ear to the other. And so he was trying to get this city also, and so he basically lost it, you could say. And Tamakrishna Maharaj shares this with Prabhupada. And he said, Prabhupada, this is unacceptable. I mean, he's completely lost it. We can't have someone representing Iskcon like this. We have to basically put him out, And Prabhupada looked at Tamakrishna Maharaj and he says, you have no idea about the mercy of Lord Nityananda. So you can see Prabhupada's actually compassion, even in that situation when the person was actually stealing from the temple, was not representing Iskcon properly, was he following his own bogus philosophy. Prabhupada still showed that mercy, and Tamakrishna Maharaj shares that he was a bit shocked. In other incidences, Prabhupada would have maybe gotten a bit heavier to teach an example, but that way he was just showing pure compassion. And he said that devotee later came back and even took sannyas. Prabhupada gave him sannyas. So incredible to see how Prabhupada was displaying actually this compassion and mercy that he specifically mentioned was actually the mercy of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. So I just would like to summarize on the last point. So it is stated in the Krishna book story of Sudama Brahmana that when loving service is rendered unto Lord Krishna, the entire creation is benefited as a result. Thus, a pure devotee of the Lord, who is always engaged in devotional service, performs welfare work for everyone. This welfare work is nothing like the philanthropy conducted in the material world, in which the less fortunate are provided with some facility to temporarily offset their suffering condition. Rather, it is meant to completely extricate the conditioned souls from material existence and bless them with an eternally blissful life in the spiritual realm. Srila Prabhupada served Lord Krishna wholeheartedly and without deviation during his physical presence among us. In this way, he benefited the entire world indirectly through his devotional service and directly by his presentation of a potent spiritual program capable of neutralizing the material existence of anyone who took it seriously. His welfare work did not stop with his physical disappearance, however, as the preaching force that he set in motion will continue to spiritually uplift the inhabitants of this world for the next 10,000 years, thus far exceeding the meager philanthropy performed by those absorbed in the bodily concept of life. Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. So it's exactly 9 o'clock, but maybe if devotees would like to share one last thing, or maybe, I don't know, question, something about Shri Prabhupada and qualities of Vaishnava.
In fact, Prabhupada's whole life was for the others. So there was a story was mentioned once there was this astrologer came to Prabhupada in Bombay. Okay, and he told Prabhupada, I'm seeing your disciples are worshipping your deity. from Vrindavan. That's why you are so sick. Because the Guru has to be there, deity should be worshipped after he passed away. So all you are taking the sins, that's why you are sick. Prabhupada told, I have come only for that purpose to take the all sin. So he became so much astonished that he did the 3 times parikrama. He said, only you can do, nobody can do that. So his entire life is for actually for others.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, David?
Just in terms of these magnanimity was
To be a little louder, I struggle.
in terms of the certain rules like 64 rounds, we changed these 32 and then 16. So, and also like different things he allowed, such as Vaishnavis and so on, to accommodate the board, to adapt certain things which is necessary for the current situation.
I really like this point because devotees often say that in Shastra it says this and there's certain traditions and ways of doing things, but actually in Shastra it also says, I cannot give the reference, I'm sure some more knowledgeable devotees could, that it says an acharya can adjust the time, place and circumstance. So it's actually a rule of Shastra, a permission of Shastra actually. So it is following Shastra for an acharya, for someone who is in that level of consciousness that he can directly, under the guidance of the Supreme Lord, adjust a certain seemingly contradicting rules and regulations to what we're used to generally see in Shastra. But this is actually a very, very crucial thing to understand why Prabhupada adjusted certain things. He wasn't going against the Shastra, he was actually following the Shastra. And we can see how it benefited, because if he hadn't, it would have been much more challenging to spread Krishna consciousness in places where people are so far away from, you could say, the traditional way of doing things. So Prabhupada was a perfect person in applying time, place, and circumstance. Thank you, David. Yes, David.
He was mentioning the most impressive thing about Srila Prabhupada was he wasn't out to impress anybody else. That was just nice. He was just him himself. When he came to America, he was like, Swamiji, why do you try the pants and everything? Use this time, use this. No, it's not easy to eat, this is their culture. Prabhupada wasn't one too much. He was uncompromising. And it's just, he wasn't going to compromise on principles.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. I don't know if I can answer. I can try.
So you're mentioning about Daksha, expert, and the verse mentions how the person who develops unalloyed devotion manifests all these good qualities, and one of these qualities in Prabhupada states is Daksha, expertise. So I was just wondering, expert in what specifically? Like expert in everything, expert in some things, or like in Prabhupada's example, we see he was expert at cooking, expert at management. So is that the case for anyone who develops unalloyed devotion, that they will also become expert in cooking, management, or if you can just elaborate?
Well, ultimately, it's actually explained that all these qualities are transcendental. One cannot perfect them without actually the practice of the chanting of the holy name and glorifying Krishna. This is what Prahlad Maharaj mentions, that by unalloyed devotional service, actually all these qualities are become manifested, these godly qualities. But at the same time, Prabhupada said that we have to endeavor, we have to try our best, and Prabhupada was very practical in that way. That's why we have training. We don't just tell devotees or just chant the holy name and you will become a better cook. No, there's practical training there. Now, how much your consciousness and how much you're able to actually become qualified in pleasing and cooking for God will definitely depend on the quality of your chanting and hearing. But because you're mentioning practically, does it mean everything? Well, ultimately, yes, the devotee is expert in many ways, but our service to the Lord might be expressed or might be manifest in its particular way, as we see in the spiritual world, that some are more expert. We often hear in spiritual world there's perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. So isn't Radharani more expert than everyone else? Of course she is, in every sense. But that doesn't mean that the service is not perfect in that sense towards the Lord. It's different levels of perfection. And I think this, I don't know if this comes from Prabhupada, I've heard it many times in Brahmachari meetings, and from what I remember, Prabhupada mentioned this, but correct me if I'm wrong. Prabhupada says, he spoke about brahmacharis, brahmacharis are meant to be trained. He said every brahmachari should be perfect at something, at least one thing, but he should know a bit of everything. So in that sense, yes, it's very important that when we serve the Lord, we do it with knowledge, but again, someone will be better than us at something. That's why it doesn't mean we can't do that service, but this is why everyone will have certain rules, because together we will be able to serve Krishna perfectly, and we can't expect to be a perfect temple president, a perfect temple commander, perfect Sankirtan devotee, perfect this, perfect that, and do all of that at the same time. So, and even Prabhupada showed how he was perfect at everything, but he wasn't doing everything all the time, and many of the things he allowed him power devotees to do because he had to focus on certain parts of his devotional service, like writing books. So he was personally later on, during Iskcon time, going on book distribution. But he always said this is the most important service, of this service that pleases me so much. So he wanted devotees to really become perfect in transmitting knowledge to people. So yes, it's very important that we stay humble. And no matter how good we are in something and how much devotees qualify us, we always remember that there's someone better than us and we can always inspire to improve. And the best example is Srila Prabhupada. I think of everything we described today, I don't think we would get better ever than Prabhupada in any of this. So it's very nice to be humble that actually we are not that perfect in anything we do, but we can aspire as much as possible to serve Prabhupada and serve the mission and ultimately serve Sri Radha and Krishna in the best way possible, under the instructions, of course, of Sri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai,
Gopinath Prabhu ki jai.